Hello and welcome to Thrive Today's webinar entitled Emotions That Energize. My name is Nick Harang and I am so glad that you're with us for this webinar. We have a great hour ahead of us today and we are blessed to have Kitty Wilder with us. Kitty is married to Dr. Jim Wilder, who some of you know is the founder of Life Model Works. And Kitty herself has been intricately involved in teaching and spreading the life model for many years and in many ways. Kitty has been friends with Chris and Jen Corsi of Thrive Today for a number of years. And Kitty's also a trainer for track 2 of Thrive Today's training. So we're excited to hear from you today, Kitty. How are things in Colorado this morning?
Well, right now it's sunny and I think we're supposed to get a little bit of drizzle today, but right now it's beautiful.
Oh, great, great. Well, here in Northern California where I'm at, it's cooled down a little bit. It was 90 on the weekend and it's only 75 today. So we're grateful for that.
Yes.
But wherever you are viewing from, we want to say a big welcome to you and thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. And for those of you who missed the live event but are watching it at a later time, we're glad you could listen in whenever you're doing that. Our topic today is emotions that energize. Emotions are a pretty big deal. It's been said that as a human, you're not a thinking being who has emotions. You are an emotional being who also thinks. Some of us may have grown up in a background where emotions were not considered very important. Maybe they were dismissed or repressed or diminished in some way. Or perhaps you grew up in a home where emotions were running the show. Maybe there was a lot of anger used to try to control behavior, or fear was a common undercurrent driving a lot of things happening. Whatever the case has been for your background, I believe today will be very helpful as a part of first of a 2-part series on emotions. I'm going to share our screen and just show our little slide here of emotions that energize. I'm going to try to do that. There we go. So what we've learned is that according to modern brain science, there are high energy emotions and there are low energy emotions. And today we're going to talk about some high energy ones. We're going to talk about joy as the fuel that our brain runs on and as one of those high energy states that's meant to be our normal for relationships and life. We're also going to talk about fear and anger, which are also high energy emotions. And Kitty's going to be sharing some brain science behind this and how this has impacted her life, as well as some stories that will model for us what to do when we get into those emotions and how to navigate those in a healthy and appropriate way. So, Kitty, not everyone has had the chance to get to know you yet. So could you just take a moment and share a little bit about yourself and maybe how you started learning about this brain science stuff and how we're designed to handle it?
Okay, well, I was raised in Nigeria, and these usually are taught in the first 2 years of life. And so the first year of life, my parents were here in America preparing to go to Nigeria as missionaries. So I was not really getting a lot of joy building as they were quite focused on preparing to go. Then once my second year, when we're learning how to return to joy from the negative emotions, my parents were in language school. So I was not learning things well there either. And they were having me in the care of a Nigerian lady during the days while they were doing the studying. So anyhow, back that to jump up to when Jim learned about all the joy from Dr. Alan Shore at UCLA. And joy just became alive because joy was now something that we could continue to build throughout life. So Jim wanted to be able to figure out a way that when you miss it in the first 2 years of life, you can still build it. So he was designing a program, which is now the Thrive Today program. And so he was working with Chris Corsi. And as often is the case, I'm Jim's guinea pig. So he was having Chris and I practice the exercises he was coming up with to see whether it would in fact do what he was trying to do, is we are adults now being able to build joy that maybe was something we missed as we were children. So that was my background of being able to be introduced to it, was getting involved in it that way. And it was very beneficial for me to fill in those gaps of how it was helping me build my joy capacity.
Wow. So you've been a guinea pig off and on through the years with Dr. Wilder and what he's learning, huh?
Right. If it works with me, and it, probably work with most everybody else.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you for that. Well, let's dive right on in and share about the good news first. The good news is that we are wired for joy, and joy is one of these high energy emotions that energize us. So what can you tell us about what you've learned about joy through these years?
Okay, well, joy is neurologically defined as being that somebody is glad to be with me, with a sparkle in their eye. And I even go back to when Jim and I were first dating, and he would often talk about my sparkly eyes. And it's like, well, okay, back then you were getting the idea, but we didn't know it was joy, that
Hmm.
I was glad to be with him. But anyhow, so neurologically, it means that somebody is glad to be with me. And we amplify the joy. So the amount of joy that we have in our right prefrontal cortex, which is just right up here, and so that's more or less like an address, so it's behind the orbit of the eye, it's on the outside, and so this is where it builds. And so there's three specific ways that really help in being able to build this joy capacity. And being able to build our capacity, we can build up to 35% of our brain. And
Wow.
how much joy we have is how much distress we can handle in life without becoming overwhelmed, traumatized, falling apart. So we want to build our joy capacity. So there's three main ways in being able to build that. We call it the left eye to left eye because it's best done through our eye gaze. So it goes from my right brain to my left eye, and then as I look at you, to your left retinas, and then up to your right prefrontal cortex. And that goes 6 seconds per cycle, or 6 times per cycle. And
Hmm.
so it's faster than consciousness. And so as we build this, we are amplifying joy. And it just continues to build as we gaze at each other. Now, we can't do it on a screen. So being able to do it FaceTime, it's not possible because the technology is not fast enough.
Hmm.
So it has to be in real time. But being able to build joy through the eye gaze of lighting up and letting someone know that you're glad to be with them. Now, the second one is being able to have voice tone. And with the voice tone, you can tell if somebody's glad to be with you or if they're just irritated, and just get out of my way. I'm done. I need to get going. And so another helpful thing is to, when you're on the telephone with somebody, since you're not in real time, this does work. Put the phone receiver on your left ear. So it will go into your right brain. When
Hmm.
you want to make logistics, of appointments or that kind of thing, then you can put it on your left ear.
Hmm.
But for relationally, put it on your left ear. And
Wow.
then the third way is to be able to have appropriate touch. Sometimes if somebody puts their hand on your shoulder, on your arm, and they just let you know, I'm glad to be here with you. And those are the three main ways of being able to build joy. So we can do that with anybody around us. And it's all joy and amplified. Now, did you want me to tell my story now?
Yeah, I'll just comment and just say that I hadn't never heard that about which side of the ear, which side of my face I should be holding the phone to. I've learned this left eye to left eye thing because I found that when I was, sitting and talking with someone and having a great conversation, that I've noticed my left eye was kind of locking onto their left eye. I'm like, why does it do that? Why don't I look at their other eye? And later I learned the brain science behind that. We're sharing a mutual mind state. We're connecting right brain to right brain through our left eyes. So never knew
Right.
about that about the phone. So I'm gonna start holding it over here now.
Yeah, yeah, that's a fun practical piece that's very helpful.
That's great. So yeah,
Yeah.
please tell us a story about joy.
Okay, well, I wanted to talk about there's kind of a different sense of a lot of people will be able to say, they just to be held, they were looking at a beautiful scenery and it just brought them joy. Joy is relational, so it has to be with somebody that you amplify. And so like right now, we have a family of baby foxes in our neighborhood, or right in our property, right behind our garage. They've made a little den under the garage in the back.
Hmm.
And so Mama and Papa Fox are running around and they're teaching there's 6 little kittens. But anyhow, in being able to enjoy them, it's moving, but there's no one to amplify the joy with. So I can enjoy it and it's a pleasurable event. But if Jim is there with me, then we can be glad to be together and we can amplify the joy, like, oh, look at how sweet they are. So anyhow, I wanted to point that out. But I do want to tell you a different story about a time of amplifying joy. I wanted to zip line. And I'm usually not a risk taker, but we were going to Costa Rica. And so I'd heard about the wonderful zip lining there. And in Costa Rica, I'm already starting to lose my breath because it was just exhilarating. It was, they got me all hooked up. They had me tied in, gave me all the instructions, and they were ready to push me off to go over the treetops. And oh my goodness, that was beautiful. And I lost my breath, and it was like, wow, I couldn't believe this. It was just tingling, and I was flying over the rooftop, the treetops, and I could see, some waterfalls here and there, just gorgeous. But then as I came in for a landing, we had to put our hands behind and grab the pole or the rope, and I have had 2 shoulder replacements, so my arms are not good. So I grabbed and I spun around and kind of freaked me out.
Wow.
But anyhow, I had enjoyed it so much. So anyhow, the guys at the end that were working the zip line, they stopped me and they said, do you want us to go with you on the next ones? Because we can hook up and tether together, and then you can do it safer. And you won't go spinning. So I was so grateful that brought me to joy that they would be with me in the midst of that. And so as there was 13 runs. And so each time then they would say, come on, Mama, let's go. We got to go the next one. So someone would be there to reach and receive the other people coming through on the zip line, because there was like 25 people in the group. And so someone had to go ahead. And I was so thrilled because, see, in the midst of these emotions, we are just delighting and being glad to be together. And so I was really grateful to have this, one of the guys that would know how to do this, tethered to me so that I would be safe. And I loved it. It was absolutely beautiful. And it was so fun. And they were telling me to stretch my arms out and just fly. I was a little nervous about that.
Yeah.
It was a very fulfilling joy moment because I loved it. It was just delightful. So making sure that you're relational, you've got someone you're glad to be with, and you're amplifying the joy is the important ingredient in being able to do the joy.
Wow. So what I heard you saying was that there was a very pleasurable experience that was made to be a joyful experience as you were able to share that with someone. And it wasn't even someone you had a long-standing relationship with. It was just a person, a human being who happened to be there, who was able to connect with you and be glad to be with you and make you feel safe and share the experience with you. And it sounds like that made it so much not only safer, but richer and more satisfying.
Right. Yeah. And the young fellows that would hook on and tether onto mine were just delightful young men. And they were always calling me Mama. So it was a nice, sweet relationship. And I just enjoyed them so much. They were delightful.
That's fun. That's fun. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about joy, and just the fact that joy is so enjoyable is something that should obviously motivate us to want to position ourselves to grow joy in our relationships, grow joy with our family, our friends, amplify joy wherever we go. But there's some other high energy emotions that are not so enjoyable. And one of those is fear. So can you tell us about fear and how it affects us, and how are we supposed to process it? How are we supposed to handle fear when we encounter it in our lives?
Okay. Yes, some of these now negative emotions are good ones to be able to explain kind of what it's like to return to joy, because that gets a little bit confusing. When we talk about returning to joy, a lot of people think, okay, I've experienced the negative feeling, now I'm back to the happy feeling. And that's not what return to joy means. A healthy brain should be able to do this within 90 seconds. And the idea is say that you're in the basement with a tornado coming by. You're with your family. you're glad to be together, but you're still fearful about the tornado that's coming over. What's going to happen to your house? So it's in the midst of that. So in sharing, we want to be able to meet people in their unhappy feelings, share the feeling so that you're there sharing the fear, and then letting them know that you're glad to be together and acting like yourself while you let them keep the emotions on themselves. So as you're in the basement there, you are, oh, I'm so glad you're all here. I'm glad that we're all together. And we're building joy at that moment. Now, oftentimes when we tell stories, we're thinking back to a story because we're not right in the midst of the emotion. So oftentimes it sounds like our stories are an already completed one, that we had joy and we're now back to happy, skippy, happy emotions. So I will tell you a return to joy, which is a level 3 emotion. Well, all the emotions can be done in the level 3 or the level 4. So let me make that distinction. Okay. So level 3 in our brain is where we synchronize and share the emotion, and that's the return to joy. When we tell a level 4 story, then that is acting like myself. What is it like me and my people to do in this emotion? So we train all these emotions in both of those levels. And so in the return to joy, we want to be able to synchronize with the person and share the emotion, where we match the intensity, we match the feeling. And as we share these negative emotions and synchronize with them, then it lowers and it deflates. And it's like, okay, I don't need to be quite so intense. So my fear story, when we went to, when Jim was starting graduate school, they often had, the professors would invite the first year students out to their home. So one of the professors had a home out in the desert. And so while we were waiting for a lot of people to be gathering, Jim and I went for a walk. Well, we were walking along this pathway, and all of a sudden I heard this bzz, 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 and I knew that that was a snake. Well, it didn't take me long for that to just flare up in my body, the adrenaline to surge, and I turned and I flew over the stones and the rocks and all that, and I got back to the house in no time.
Wow.
I was back to the house by the time Jim had been able to kind of turn and look, because he's much more thoughtful. He's not quite so reactionary, but when fear grips me, I'm out of there.
You move.
There's this, adrenaline rises and I can really run. You wouldn't believe it. So anyhow, when he came back to the house, then we were able to be glad to be together, that neither one of us had been injured, but I was still terrified. It took a while for my breathing to slow down, for me to be able to calm and be able to survive that one. And I have a history of being terrified of snakes. And one of the other times when we were walking around the neighborhood and someone's sprinklers came on, you know how sometimes when sprinklers come on, they go, bzz, 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 bzz.
Yeah.
I flew also then. So I'm quite reactionary with fear, and I just bolt. And so fear is a strong one. And so Jim came back and tried to synchronize with me and help calm me down. And we were glad to be together and grateful that we were safe. So hopefully that helps explain how level 3 works in being able to share the emotion and being able to attune with another person, because that really helps you just like, okay, I'm not alone in this. When we feel alone, then we feel traumatized.
I see. Well, you mentioned, maybe just share a little more about that. You mentioned that he came back to the house. Sounds like minutes later, because you set a new world record of sprinting. But you said he tried to synchronize with you, and so he didn't invalidate you, he didn't dismiss what you were feeling, but he synchronized. So maybe just share a little bit about how that helped you process and kind of metabolize the emotion of fear, and maybe what it would have looked like had he not done what he did.
Okay. Yes. When somebody synchronizes with you, they kind of match, like, yes, that was frightening. That was terrible. Boy, did you have the speed of an Olympian to fly over those rocks and to get back to the house. Oh my goodness, that must have been terrifying to you. And being able to validate how big this is. and being able to focus on the feeling, being able to feel it intensely. And we match our body temperature by doing that. We match our breathing. We match all kinds of biochemistry in the midst of doing that by sharing the emotion. And when somebody does that with you, you feel understood. And like, okay, I don't have to keep proving to you, I really was scared. Did you not get that? But when they match it, it's like, yeah, they got how scared I was. Now, sometimes when people are synchronizing, they may over the top synchronize. And it's like, whoa, that must have been absolutely terrible. And it's like, no, it wasn't quite that bad. So we have to pay attention as to how we match this with the person, because if we over the top, it's like, no, they didn't get it. If they under it, it's like, no, they didn't get it. And we still need to keep letting them know, this was really big for me. This was really important. And so we really want to focus on their facial expression, their breathing, their intensity of it, and the description of what they're talking about. And when we do that, then the person feels like they shared the emotion, they weren't left alone, and they were validated. And once we're validated, then we can offer comfort. But if we offer comfort before we validate, it does not work.
It's not very comforting, is it?
No, it's like, you didn't understand. Yeah. So we need to validate first, match the emotions, synchronize, and then we can offer comfort. So it's not a straight fix it type of thing. We need to keep our relational circuits on, which is another whole topic too. Yeah. But being able to stay relational helps in keeping a person grounded and not flying out of their skin.
Yeah. Well, you definitely experienced some fear there, and rightfully so, as a snake was there, and it was a gift.
Did you share the intensity? Could you feel my fear?
Oh, I could discern it. I didn't feel that in my body, but I was like, oh yeah, I get it. She's afraid and she's booking. She's just running.
Another thing that's helpful about sharing these stories is that we learn these stories from our parents and the people in our family, and not always did they handle it appropriately. So we learned that we don't want to do it like them. So being able to hear other people's stories, now you've heard my story. So next time with a fear story, you may say subconsciously, but it'll be like, okay, Kitty's story is another fear story in there. So it's adding to your repertoire of how to handle fear, what it's like, me and my people, how we do that. So it's helpful to hear how other people handle these emotions. And we get the downloads into our right brain on each of the emotions, which really helps.
Yes, that's something that I've learned from Thrive Today, is that one of the ways that our brain is strengthened and grows these relational skills is through relationships with people that share how they process through, how they had that spike of fear, what they felt like in their body, what was going through their brain, what their actions were. So we see the fear response, but as you modeled in this level 3 story you just told, Kitty, you let us know that that fear wasn't fatal and it wasn't final. Yes. You went there to the nth degree, but you were able to return back to your normal state of joy. And by modeling that, some of us who maybe don't have that skills, maybe we get stuck in shame for days, or maybe fear we get stuck in for much longer than is necessary. It's actually through these relational stories that you're sharing today that is one of the key ways that our brain can be kind of discipled or learn a new way of being. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, it's very helpful to hear other people's stories and how they were able to return to joy in them.
That's great. Well, I love that, because that's one of the gifts of the life model that's taught at Thrive, is that, hey, you don't have to stay stuck. And I think different ones of us, we have our different experiences to where I can handle sadness pretty easily. I get sad for, a little bit of time, but I talk to the Lord about it, and then I'm bouncing back. But maybe one of these other ones, maybe shame, we just get stuck for, several days, just feeling bad about ourselves, beating ourselves up. And yet we might know somebody who had a very embarrassing moment, felt very shameful, And yet, you know, half an hour later, they're just laughing and fine. You're like, how do you do that?
Yes.
But they've got a path back to joy in their brain that's been wired to get back to that normal state. So that's been just so helpful for me. And it's actually one of the things that Thrive Today does in their 5-day relational skill training that's offered a couple of times a year. And so I actually want to ask from our audience what you guys have experienced with Thrive Today's relational brain skills training. So I'm going to put up a poll here and give you guys a chance to interact. And then a little later on in the webinar, we'll have a chance for Q&A with Kitty and comments. But for now, we're just going to launch the poll, and you'll have a chance to choose the answer that fits you best. So should see on your screen, what is your experience with Thrive Relational Skills Training? So first answer is, I've been to one or more of the 5-day Thrive training tracks. There's 4 tracks, track 1, 2, 3, as well as a True Identity Flex track at the beginning. Some might say, well, I haven't been yet, but I'm planning to go this July. It's on my calendar. I'm praying about it. I'm planning for it. Others say, well, I haven't been yet, but I'm hoping to. I'd like to. And then some of you may just not really be familiar with Thrive training yet, which is something we're going to share about more here in a moment. So while that poll is up, you have another moment or so to respond, and then I'll read our results. I want to take a few minutes to share just a little bit more about what Thrive training is for those that don't know. Thrive training is a unique 5-day intentional training environment designed to equip you with relational skills to help you thrive as a person and to foster thriving relationships with your family and community. So these relational skills, including returning to joy from the big 6 emotions, they're meant to be passed down from brain to brain from your mom and dad during that first 2 years of life that Kitty mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. But even the best of families are missing some skills, or perhaps maybe weaken some. And so sometimes we just don't get all of those relational brain skills we need in those early stages of life. But as you've heard, Dr. Wilder and Chris Corsi, these guys have taken the research of UCLA, Dr. Alan Shore, and identified 19 relational brain skills that provide the full range of life functions for our minds and our relationships to prosper. When we have them, we live in joy. We live more in peace, and our circumstances are, you know, good or bad or otherwise, but we have the relational and emotional capacity to handle them in a relational and healthy way. When we lack some of these relational skills, the result can be pain. The result can be addictions, which is non-relational solutions to relational problems, conflicts, and other problems. So let's take a look at our poll now and see our results. Okay, here. So we have about 47% of our listeners today live on the webinar have been to one or more of the tracks, which is great. 0 have not yet attended but planning to go this July, and then 37% haven't yet been to a Thrive track but are hoping to, and then some 16% are not yet familiar, which is partially why we're giving a little more information about that. So, okay, well, great. Well, the tracks, let me just share a little bit more about those. I'm going to share the screen here. As I mentioned, the training is 5 days, which sounds intense, but I've been to 2 tracks, and it's not intense, it's intentional, meaning that every hour is planned, and it's built around a rhythm of joy and peace, because that's the way our brains and our relationship and life is supposed to work, with rhythms of higher energy and then lower energy. So there's times every day for interacting with Emmanuel and just talking with Jesus and journaling and praying. There's times to fellowship and connect with the people that are there. There's times to train together in these skills, which relational skills, you can learn about them in a book, but you learn them in relationship. And as we mentioned, of course, it's based on the biblical truth, as well as this amazing insight from modern brain science. And there's 19 skills that are covered over the tracks. Now there's 3 core tracks, track 1, 2, 3, and a flex track, and they build on one another. So let me just start with track 1. Track 1 is where you would come for the week with a bonded partner, and you would learn about joy and rest as kind of resetting your normal and learning how to live from that place of joy and rest. Now, when I say bonded partner, what we mean is you come with a person that you already have a strong relationship with. Could be a spouse, could be a teen or adult child, could be a best friend or a mentor, somebody you already have a good bond and attachment with, because you're going to be building a deeper connection as you practice these relational brain skills. And then, of course, after track 1, you've got some homework to do over the year where you're practicing these relational skills each week and building your brain, building your skill set. And you can come back a year later, or sometimes people, fast track it 6 months later. Sometimes people have to wait a year or two in between, but they come back for track 2. And that's where Kitty is a trainer. And this July, she'll be in Holland, Michigan. And my wife and I will be in track 2. Super excited to be with Kitty for a whole week as she teaches us how to return to joy from these big 6 negative emotions that we all run into. And then track 3 is solutions for just the pains that we encounter in relationships, and how do we identify those different levels of pain based on the 5 different levels of the brain and which ones help. But what's been added the last few years is a flex track called True Identity. Now, this is a great starting point, especially if you maybe don't have somebody that could jump in with you to come for the week. So I did this 2 years ago. I found out about Thrive Training in January of 2017, and in February of 2017, I flew to attend my first True Identity training. And so I was too quick of a turnaround to get childcare and have my wife come with me. So I went by myself, and I didn't have any homework or pre-work I had to do. So I just went for the week, and it was just wonderful to be with Chris and Amy Brown and all the people that were training, and to learn these relational skills in little triads as we would practice them in relationship and rotate in the groups. It was just a lot of fun, and a great help to me to begin growing more and living from that place of joy and peace. So our next training is coming up this July 21st to the 26th in beautiful Holland, Michigan. And if you would like more information, you can go to thrivetoday.org and /thrive. So great. And did I just fail to share my screen? Was I going through those slides and thinking that they were showing to you? Wow, that's kind of disappointing. Now, let's see. Do I need a return to joy from shame moment now?
That's next webinar.
Okay, well, sorry about that. I meant to share the screen. So let's just show those quickly. And let's see here, we'll do that. Okay, let's back it up. Okay, this is what I thought you were seeing. The first one was the 5 days of training based on the Bible and brain science and the 19 relational skills. And then here, I'll pause here because there's the track 1, 2, 3, which again, build on each other. So you'll start with track 1, or you can start with the flex track with True Identity and just come, and it's just a really rich, wonderful time. You'll meet wonderful people from around the country and around the world. People fly from all over the world to attend this because there's really nothing else like this that we're aware of that has identified and trains in these relational skills. And then, of course, as I mentioned, it's at Holland, Michigan this year, where the Corsies have recently moved and resettled in beautiful Holland, Michigan, in the middle of July. So great time to go to get out of wherever you're at this summer and have a special time learning and growing in a joyful, peaceful environment. Some things that are going to really benefit every area of your life. What I found is that when I get more relationally and emotionally healthy, not only am I a more joyful person, but everybody around me benefits. My wife, my kids, my neighbors, my friends. The more relationally healthy I get, my relationships just work better, and life is just more joyful. Isn't it, Kitty?
Absolutely. Good testimony.
That's great. Well, Kitty, you are a trainer for track 2. And are there any things you would like to say if somebody's maybe hearing this webinar and kind of like me a couple years ago, heard about it and like, oh man, that's coming up. I wonder if I could do it. I wonder if I should go this year. Anything you could say about why somebody who's not yet come to a Thrive training might want to attend True Identity, or maybe attend track 1 if they can get a bonded partner to come with them?
Well, yes, there's so many things about it that a variety, and the majority of people that come have expressed that this is the missing piece. So we have, the regular lay people, we have pastors, we have doctors, we have missionaries, counselors, all kinds of different ones that come. And as you get the training, then you can take it home and pass it on to your own environment and share it there. And being able to come and learn these skills is just incredibly valuable. It has been so transforming to so many of us. For me, it has done a world of good to be able to help me with being able to learn how to be relational. I was raised in a boarding school, and a lot of the relational skills were missing. And so this has really been extremely transforming for me, helpful. I used to be terrified to speak to more than one person at a time. And now I'm training track 2. I absolutely love it. So as you come to track 1, the whole environment is so joy building, and it is just kind of a refreshing and new place. And then, of course, I absolutely love it when you move on from track 1 to my track and track 2, because even though we're spending time in these negative emotions, we're usually a smaller group, not quite as large as track 1, and we really bond well and make some good friendships there and really connect well. At the end of the week, we go in and we're training track 1. During the whole week, track 3 is training us. And so we get a lot of interaction between the different tracks and how different ones have been trained in learning these things and passing on the skills. So it's valuable in so many different ways. And then one of the highlights, though, is our dancing that we do after lunch. With the dancing, we do it as a Messianic Davidic dancing because it's a brain skill. Learning how to move your body in time and space with others is a brain skill. But also we're incorporating a great worship time and just fun. We dance in circles, and so we are lively. After lunch, it's usually a time when people are getting sleepy, so we're very active, and it's gives you a little bit of movement after sitting still for the day. There's just nothing about Thrive that is just disappointing. It just seems like everything about it is just joy-filled. And these weeks of Thrive are my highlights of the year. I absolutely love them.
Wow. Well, that is a great testimony, Kitty. And thinking about the fact there's 52 weeks in a year, and you would say, hey, the high water mark of the year is when I get to go and be with a group of people that are in this joyful, peaceful environment where we're learning relational skills together, where we're just growing in connection with each other and with the Lord. And it's leaving a deposit. It's actually changing and transforming us. It's not just you go up and you come back down to normal, but you've actually built something in your life and in your relational circuits in your brain to carry you forward in a different way.
And you're building your joy capacity so much during that week that sometimes as people have left, they said, I had a good life, but this was the best week ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, if that doesn't encourage anybody to consider it, I don't know what will. My encouragement would be, it is an investment. It is an investment of a week of your life plus travel. We have 4 young kids, so we have to work really hard months in advance to plan for childcare.
Right.
And there's, of course, the financial piece. It's cheaper than, counseling and repair work, so to speak, if you add it up by the hourly rate. But it is an investment of money, and it is an investment of time. But I just want to say, if you're thinking about it, you're like, man, I'd love to, I just don't see how. My encouragement would be just to lift that up to God and say, God, I want to grow. I want to grow in my relational skills. I want to grow and be healthier in who I am as a person. And I want my brain to work the way you designed it to be. So, Lord, I'm asking you to make a way, make the time, make the money, make it come together. If not this July 2019, maybe 2020 is your year that you can be keeping an eye on the Thrive Today page and the events page, as well as the emails that come out and saying, hey, there's one coming. In 2020, I'm going to really pray and trust God to bring what I need, because that's what our God does, is he provides what we need. He's the God that feeds us, the God that meets all of our needs according to his riches. So don't write yourself off if it seems, just impossible, because we serve a God who is the God of the impossible. Amen.
Well, and also, too, some of the people that have come have sometimes been sponsored by other people because they couldn't afford it. One time we had a group of, I think it was 5 pairs that came because someone had sold their home, and so their tithe was to support sending some people from their community to
Wow.
come and thrive. So there's all kinds of creative ways to be able to find ways to be able to finance this.
Mm.
But yes, it is an investment, and we usually talk about it being a master's level training.
Mm. Yeah, there's really nothing else out there like it that we're aware of. So this is awesome. But Kitty, we've talked about a few high energy emotions. There's one more that we want to talk about, and next month we'll be talking about the 4 low energy emotions of sadness and despair and shame and disgust. And those are not fun ones to talk about or to stay in, but they're important to learn how to get out of quickly, as you said.
Right.
So that's next month. But today, before we take some Q&A and hear some comments from our live audience today, can you tell us a little bit about anger? What exactly is anger? How does it affect us? And what are we supposed to do about it?
Okay. Well, the ones that we're talking about today, the emotions, these are the sympathetic system emotions, and the ones next time we'll be talking about are the parasympathetic emotions. So that's another distinction that we have. But anger is that we need to have something stopped. And so we are facing this anger, and we have oftentimes as children, when we're very angry, our parents, our caretakers will send us to another room and tell us, okay, don't come out until you know how to be nice. That does not give us a way back to joy. We don't learn how to be glad to be with anyone in the midst of that because we're just left alone. And so we want to be able to stay relational, find out from the person who's angry, what is it that you want to have stopped? Because as they have those stopped, then we can share the emotion. And oftentimes it's like, yeah, I think, if there's some bullying or something that's happening that needs to stop, we can share that. But if we don't investigate and find out what it is they need to have stopped, yes, their anger is very unpleasant. And so it needs to be a relational one where we connect with each other. So and each one of these emotions has its own separate pathway back to joy. Oftentimes when we don't learn how to be relational with the emotion, then we'll jump to another one. And oftentimes it's easier to be sad. So I know when I've struggled with anger until I could learn how to deal with it, I was lost at how to get back to joy in the midst of that. But if I could jump to sadness and cry, then I could usually find someone glad to be with me. So we need to find our own pathway back from each one of these emotions rather than jumping from one to another. So anyhow, with the anger, I will tell you an anger story and give you another download in your brain on how Kitty handles anger. And this time I'm going to be talking about a level 4. So this is not a return to joy. This is what it's like me and my people to do. And when it's like me and my people and we're in these emotions, we want to stay relational. That's a very important part of the emotion. So this story is that one of my employers a number of years ago got very angry at me because it seemed like every year I was getting called into jury duty. And after maybe 5 or 6 years of it, I think, she just blew up at me and it's like, why on earth are you getting called into jury duty again? It affected her workload when I was gone to jury duty, but she just got livid. Well, that amplified with me, and I got livid with her with like, why on earth are you getting mad at me for getting my call to jury? There's nothing I can do about it. It's the luck of the draw. Well, not really the luck, but I had a choice in it. And I was being called in for jury duty, and I wasn't crazy about it either, but I have to report to you as my employer.
Yeah.
And she was just ranting and raving at me, and it was just, I could just, feel the anger rising in me. I could feel it just like, oh, I just didn't know what to do with it. But it was like me to stay relational and be able to tell her, it's nothing I can do about it. I don't see why you keep getting mad at me about it because I can't do anything about it. And as I continued to speak like that with her, then she was able to calm down and be to a point to where, yeah, that doesn't make sense why I get so mad at you about it, because you can't do anything about it. But it just as the situation makes me angry, it affects my workload and all that. So we could synchronize with that. But it was like me and acting like myself to stay relational and be able to stand up for myself and not let her pummel me, and being able to say, I understand you're angry. You have no reason to be angry with me because I didn't cause it. I'm the, the result of the draw. And so we were able to calm down about it. And so there's that difference in the levels of training there with level 3 and level 4. So I hope those two stories were able to give a distinction of what that was like. But now you'll have another download of how Kitty handled this anger. We do each of the emotions in both level 3 and level 4 as we go through track 2 training.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to being there with you, with my wife, Christy, here in July to get more downloads from your brain and also practice these relational skills of returning to joy with a group of people that are gathered to learn together. So that'll be fun.
Yes.
We'll
have a great time. We love it.
Well, great. Well, I want to give you guys, the audience, a chance to interact with Kitty this morning. Perhaps she's said some things that have caused a couple questions to come to mind, or maybe just a comment about something she said that was helpful. So at the bottom of your screen, if you move your mouse, you should see a little menu appear, and you'll see Q&A. If you type into the Q&A window any questions you have, we'll start feeding a couple of those questions to Kitty. Or maybe you have a comment or you just want to share something that was thoughtful or encouraging. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. JOCA from Mexico says, hello, Kitty. It sounds like this is a friend of yours, perhaps a Thrive trainee or from another setting.
Is that Hoka?
Yes, looks like Hoka.
Yes, hi Hoka. Nice to hear from you.
That's great. And while we're waiting for you to be able to jot down any comments or questions you have, want to mention that maybe you want to learn more about these things right away. A couple of ways to do that are some of the resources that have been put out. One is a book called Transforming Fellowship. And this time I'm going to share my screen by clicking the share button. And there we go. So we have, there we go. On the left, you see the white book, Transforming Fellowship, 19 brain skills that build joyful community. So this is after almost 20 years of learning about and training others in these relational skills with Dr. Wilder. Chris finally put it all into a book and describes what each of these skills are, how we're supposed to learn them as in that kind of infant stage of life, what happens when we have it and how life works well, what happens when we don't, and how we get it remedially if we missed it. So this is just a super informative book, and I've heard of small groups going through it, one skill at a time, talking about it and sharing their lives and how it looks like in their lives or the absence of it in their lives and growing together. So that's a great book for individuals and groups. But another great book for groups especially is the newly released Relational Skills in the Bible. This is a Bible study by Chris Coursey and Amy Brown. Amy is also a trainer at Thrive Today. And she is somebody who came and got trained years ago and has just grown so much in these things that she said, I want to train others in this. So she has been training for several years now, and now she and Chris put together a small group resource that goes through places in the Bible where these relational skills, or the absence of, show up. And then you get to actually practice some of these relational skills in community with your small group. So these are something to consider if you don't have. You're able to pick those up at our Thrive Today store, which is, I'll just share that in the chat window. Let's see. There's the link, thrivetoday.org/resources. One comment came in and says, the Thrive program has really helped my husband and I with managing our emotions and growing in so many skills. We will be attending Thrive Track 3 this year and believe that this is better than therapy and more useful. Okay, well, that's an encouraging comment. And we have a few questions. Kitty, can you share a bit more about the sympathetic and parasympathetic emotions?
Okay, well, the sympathetic is the high energy, and the parasympathetic is the low energy. And so we are often have a dominant nervous system. And so we, just as an example, like when we worship, being able to be still and be quiet before God, that appeals to parasympathetic nervous systems. They can figure out how to quiet and connect with Jesus. But then there's others who have a sympathetic nervous system, which is the high energy, and they connect best with God when they're out hiking, jogging, running, or whatever. And so we also do that in when we're singing worship songs. If a worship leader can lead a group in with high energy songs and low energy songs, so that both types of people, whatever type of nervous system you have, you can make a connection with God. And so it's just a part of our nervous system, and I usually have one or the other that's dominant. And so one energizes and one just lowers the energy. And we just have to find out which one we connect best with and who we are. I hope that's helped explain it a little bit more.
Yeah, they asked a follow-up question that I didn't see at first, and it said, well, how do we attune to these? Because one's high, one's low, and how do you kind of attune to the difference, perhaps?
Well, and being able to attune, if we watch what the other person is experiencing, if we happen to be a parasympathetic responder and the other person is a sympathetic responder, you may need to jog in place a little bit with them. If they're high energy, it's like, I'm really mad at this and I need to get some energy out. You may need to, jump into that. And we can do that for a short time. We may not be long distance joggers, but being able to match the intensity of what the other person has. In attuning to that, we want to be able to do that. Now, like if we're walking into a room and it's very quiet and somebody is sobbing, and we're maybe a sympathetic responder, we want to lower our nervous system, lower our voice, come in and say, are you okay? What do I need to know about this? And be able to connect to them. Just walk into a room, pay attention to what the atmosphere of the room is like so that you know what level to attune to, whether it's high energy or whether it's low energy, so that you can attune. Oftentimes, if there's a room where it's quiet and we come in kind of bolstering and loud, and it's kind of jarring to our nervous systems. So we want to be able to take the time to step into a room, step into a situation, and assess what the level is at. So we know where to move our voices, where to move our intensity, and then we don't jar people.
Yeah, I think that's really, really helpful. I mean, it's been helpful for me to learn about the high energy kind of normal and the low energy normal, and I'm a little bit more high energy. So just that awareness of like, oh, this person is just more soft spoken. I can kind of dial down a little bit, try to match them. And especially if somebody's in a big emotion. I found that with one of my sons who gets, when he gets a little overheated by something happening with siblings, every now and again, I'll just realize, hey, let's go check the mail, and we'll get on our shoes and we'll walk really fast to the mailbox. And it just matches that high energy, because he's in an anger state of high energy. So we'll kind of I'll match that. We'll walk. Doesn't always want to do it, but when he does, I notice he starts calming down just by dad being with him, kind of walking fast, having a little bit of a high energy match attunement there, and that can kind of help him get back to joy.
When we keep the focus on the other person rather than on our own self, then we're able to help them return to joy.
Well, great. Another person asked, will this be recorded so that I can share it with others who might consider attending Thrive? And the answer is yes. All of our webinars are recorded, and about a day after, you will receive an email in your inbox, and it'll say that here's the link to the recording. And you can share that, you can send that, and if you miss a recording, you can go back in your emails and you can register after the fact. And it will give you an automatic link to the email as long as it's been about a day. So yes, please, if there is anybody that you're thinking of that, hey, so-and-so would love to hear about what Kitty was talking about, these emotions, I think they'd be encouraged or helped by this. Or maybe somebody that you think would like to know more about the Thrive training, please go ahead and share this with anybody. Another person wrote, what would you say to a woman who is very interested in healing more with these resources, and yet her husband is not? It's a good question.
Yes, it's a practical problem. And we have a lot of women that may have a husband, and we've on occasion had a husband that has a wife that doesn't want to come.
Yeah.
So you don't have to come with your spouse. That's often the ideal, but oftentimes what's happened is they'll come with a best friend. And as they go through it and go home and are practicing the exercises and their spouse is seeing the changes in them, then they want to get on board. And so sometimes some women have gone through all 3 tracks with a girlfriend and then come back and redo it with their spouse and can then go through it. So, it's not a one-time thing. As you come through and learn it again, you pick up new things, or new things may be said, or there may be new developments in the brain science that we're sharing that we now are aware of that we weren't aware of before. So it's not once you've passed grade 1, you can't ever go back to grade 1 again. We've had some people that have gone through these tracks 2 or 3 times.
Wow. Yeah, and my encouragement would be, it is hard when you're in a place where you want to grow in an area and your spouse doesn't, but don't let that hold you back from you growing as much as you can. That the more you grow, the more you're going to benefit. And it's, relational systems, they say, are kind of like a mobile. When one part of the mobile moves, the whole mobile can shift. So as you take care of you and what God's calling you to do, just pray and see what God might do in your spouse. Another person mentioned, I'm in major transition, so coming with another is too hard right now, and I'm not married. I'm new to the areas, and it's so sad I can't come to Thrive 1 without another person. So it sounds like this person would love to go to Thrive Track 1, and they can't. Kitty, do you have any encouragement about the Flex Track, the true identity, where you don't have to come with a bonded partner?
Right. The Flex Track is really a good kind of an in-between and an additional type of track. Sometimes people don't feel ready to move on from track 1 to track 2, so they will do a Flex Track. But also in the Flex Track, sometimes people have made connections with someone else that is there that would like to do the track 1, and they have not got a partner either, and so they make a friend there and a connection. But it needs to be someone that you can do the exercises with. And so some of the connections, don't always work out well. So do be prayerful about it and see if making a friend there in the Flex Track would be another alternative to be able to find someone to go through the other tracks with.
That's great. Well, Deborah's asking, what's the difference between the online courses and the on-site training in Michigan? You want to take that one, Kitty?
Okay. Well, the online classes, of course, it's doing the exercises, or the homework and working through the class, but that's left brain information. When you come to the on-site, then you are doing the right brain exercises. So it's like reading the book and making, doing tests and quizzes about how to ride a bicycle. But then you need to come to Thrive to learn how to ride the bicycle so that you can do the maneuvering, you can get the balance, you can do the tricks or whatever, when you're learning a bicycle. So it's quite different in those 2 different aspects. One is the left brain training and the other is the right brain training.
That's really good. Yeah. Back in the day, you guys used to try to cram it all in. You'd have a lecture with all this amazing information, and then you try to practice it. And I think you'd go till 9 at night in the early days. And then you learn about no, we need joy and quiet. And we need to, so you have the study part beforehand for track 1, 2, 3. There's no study necessary for True Identity Flex Track, but you certainly are welcome to do as much as you'd like there. But there's the study part just to understand the brain science, understand all these concepts. So you have the handles, and then when you get together live, you just get on the bike right away and start pedaling.
Right.
That's great. Let me see if we have time for one more question or comment. Okay, well, I think, here's a comment. We're so excited about Thrive Training. It is our life preserver. That's great. They've just found it really to be helpful for them and maybe their marriage or their family. This is very helpful. Thank you. Laura Davis says, thank you, Kitty. So yeah, people are finding today's content helpful, and it's been a joy to be with you, Kitty. I've learned some new things and got reminded of some things that I've picked up this last several years of my diving deep into these things. And for those of you that joined us live or joined us after the fact, thanks again for tuning in. As I mentioned, this is being recorded, and by tomorrow, you'll receive a link with the recording. And again, feel free to share, pass it on. These are free webinars we do where we want to equip you with information and truth that's going to help you grow in your relational and emotional and spiritual health. But it's also a place for us to share with you some of the next steps you can take. So again, some of the resources, the training, the books, because these are things that can help you to grow and mature and reach your full potential in Christ. So, well, we've reached the end of the hour. So again, on behalf of myself and Kitty and the team at Thrive Today, we pray that God would equip you with the relational skills that are going to cause you to grow in Christ-like character and make all of your relationships thrive. So thank you, and God bless you. So Kitty, any final words before we sign off?
Looking forward to the next month when we do the next webinar.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, they'll be back in June, and keep your eyes on your inbox for that upcoming webinar. And Kitty, I look forward to seeing you in person at Track 2 in Holland in July.
Sounds great. See you then.
All right. God bless you, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.